And there's
Look at that, I'm in the black screen mode, boy. Where's my volume? Well, I sure do like Todd's background noise. Those tweeting birds are kind of pleasant, Todd. You can just keep that up all meeting long.
I can do that.
Well, Mayor, it's the witching hour. You have 1, 2, 2.5, 3, 4, 5 council members. Four. Connie is there. She is. So you got 5 with Connie.
Okay. Let's see, Andrew saw we got a text right before the meeting. Oh, Karen, she will be just a moment late. Good.
David just joined us. Let me recount. You got 7. So I'd say go ahead and proceed. And you are, let me get us recording here. I apologize. Now you are recording and live.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Why don't we go ahead and call our meeting to order? If I could ask everyone to have a moment of silence. And then if I could ask Greg, if you don't mind saying the pledge for us this evening.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah. Thank you, Greg. And we have Laurie as our clerk tonight. Laurie Razor. Thank you, Laurie. And I think you have an electronic view of all 8 council members, so we could dispense with roll call. Each council member should have a copy of the minutes of our last regularly scheduled meeting. If you'd like to look at those for any possible corrections or additions. And if not, would entertain a motion that they be approved.
So moved.
Thank you, Willow.
Second, Mayor.
Thank you, Greg. And if there are no questions about those minutes, then all in favor say aye.
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 Thank you. Are there any opposed? Then the minutes are approved. Each council member should also have received a copy of our latest check register. If you could indicate if you received that register. Thank you. We do have one public comment tonight. Interestingly, council, Mr. Prather. So would like to recognize Adam Prather. And Mr. Prather, be glad for you to take 4 or 5 minutes and address the council.
Okay, thank you, sir. And good evening, council members. So, yes, my name is Adam Prather, no relation, I believe, but I am a resident on Wood Road, across from Great Crossing Park. So last week, I was in my backyard and witnessed the tragic accident which took place and with Mr. Ponce, I believe, and his fiance. I was present and assisted as I could for nearly 1 hour as many courageous men and women worked to save Mr. Ponce and his fiance. But sadly, to all of our efforts to rescue Mr. Ponce, we failed. So I pray that such an event never occurs again to that outcome at Great Crossing Park. And, today I just feel that it's my responsibility for a call to action to prevent future outcomes of this nature. I don't have any experience as a rescue professional, but I understand that advanced training is required to become proficient in your abilities. I'm thankful for the Georgetown Emergency Service personnel and all that they do. However, as an observer last Wednesday, it was apparent that there were opportunities for training that could have, increased the success rate of the operation. So, although not all rescue attempts can be successful, our rescue personnel should be provided with the best training and equipment to perform their service the best that they're able. Additionally, perhaps increased awareness or maybe signage or markings on the boat ramp could potentially deter visitors to the park to be susceptible to those dangerous conditions. And I just wanted to propose those actions. Thank you for your time today and for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Yeah, Mr. Prather, I appreciate your comments because I think every council member and myself agree with them 100%. Let me give you some information that I hope will help you understand better what happened the other night. The Georgetown Fire Department Rescue Squad was not called.
Okay.
We were never notified. Our fire department folks are all we have a swiftwater team. We've had swiftwater teams fully trained and certified with all the right equipment for over 20 years. We were not called the other evening. Even though I understand there may have been a slight delay in part of the response, we were not called as a backup even at that point. So we regret the tragedy. And had we known and been able to respond, I don't know that we could have affected a different outcome, Mr. Prather, either. But please know that we do have that training, and we're real proud of it.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Mayor, may I say something, please?
Yes, sir.
Eduardo Ponce was an employee of our company. We called him Tay, and he was a beloved employee. He'll be sadly missed, and I just want to say that I won't comment on Mr. Prather's comments, but I just want to let the council know that he was a great employee. He was going to be married in July, and it's just a tragic loss for our company. And his brother also works for us, who is just really taking it really hard right now. So I just wanted to pass that along, that he will be sorely missed, and it's a tragic accident. So just keep the family in your thoughts and prayers.
And every one of us can help people remember and share the video. We've all seen the videos on Facebook of what low head dams do when they trap beach balls, or we've all seen the videos of logs or beach balls or other things trapped in a low head dam. And the action at the bottom of that dam is circular. It doesn't release them. It just keeps pulling them underwater. They're terribly dangerous, especially when the water's a little bit high. And I've talked with some of our parks people. I am not implying that was the case here, but we do have some adventurists who really like it when the creek gets up just a little bit and is a little faster. So we all can do our part there. But thank you, Mr. Prather. And Greg, I didn't know that you all had that close a connection there. Sorry for your all's loss. Roy, was Mr. Prather the only public comment?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So thank you, Mr. Prather. You can stick around and have a great civics lesson, or we'll be glad to release you whenever you choose to sign out.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Under mayor comments, let's see, not too many, because we've got a lot of stuff to talk about later. I did want to mention that we had a good week this last week, and we swore in another police officer at the police department, Oscar Sanchez. Just something, and also to look forward to for Memorial Day, the Horsey 100 will be back this year. They weren't able to have it last year. This year it will look different. There probably will be a fewer bicyclists, and rather than have their big congregation of folks over at Georgetown College, they're going to move those activities out to the county park where they can socially distance in a much better way. But we have that to look forward to, of some sense of normalcy with the Horsey 100 returning. Also delighted to report to you that I attended a live Chamber of Commerce luncheon today at Cardone. I'm not sure if anybody else was there or not, but boy, did that feel good. Attendance, they restrict the attendance just a little bit still, but folks were together. It was the first time in over a year that the chamber's been together in that fashion. They did the food very carefully. I just thought it was very well done, and I wanted you all to know that. The other thing I want you to know is that we have been working on our internal plans to make sure we've got a couple of things covered correctly, and we will be reopening City Hall to public flow 1 week from today. So the city's never been closed. However, City Hall was closed. And but we intend a week from today to open that. Guidance is changing quickly. We see, it seems, as more vaccines are administered, the guidance changes. So I'm optimistic that as guidance continues to change, that with all of this progress, that maybe soon we can be meeting together again. But did want to let you know that we'll take that step with City Hall. Okay, that is all of the mayor's comments. Any questions about any of that stuff? Okay. Under item 7 on the agenda, city attorney, we have second reading of the amendment to the Georgetown Scott County zoning ordinance. Sponsors Ms. Hambrick and Ms. Tingle-Sames.
An ordinance amending the Georgetown Scott County zoning ordinance, including sections 2.51.1, 4.32, 4.35, and 4.422. Summary. Amends the Georgetown Scott County zoning ordinance to provide that mobile home parks and mobile home subdivisions are not permitted as conditional uses in B2 districts, and that mobile home camps are permitted as conditional uses in B2 districts, but not in B3 districts. 2. Amends the Georgetown Scott County zoning ordinance to remove the provision allowing singular mobile homes on a solid foundation as a conditional use in R1C districts, and removes the provision allowing mobile homes on a single lot as a conditional use in R2 and R3 districts. 3. Amends the Georgetown Scott County zoning ordinance to remove the provision allowing mobile home parks and mobile home subdivisions as conditional uses in the B2 Highway Commercial District. 4. Provides for repeal of inconsistent ordinances, severability of provisions, and an effective date upon passage and publication. The full text of this ordinance is available for examination in the City Clerk's Office, 100 North Court Street, Georgetown, Kentucky, 40324, or at www.georgetownky.gov. Publicly introduced and read for the first time, April 26, 2021. Publicly read for the second time, May 10th, 2021.
Thank you. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Thank you, Willa.
Second.
Thank you, Karen. If there, it's pretty straightforward amendment to the zoning ordinance. If there are no questions, or are there any questions? Good. Then Lori, would you mind calling the roll?
Ms. Tackett,
Yes.
Mr. Stone,
Yes.
Mr. Hampton,
Yes.
Mr. Showalter,
Yes.
Ms. Tingle Sands,
Yes.
Ms. Lesby Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Lesby,
Yes.
Ms. Hambrick.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That passes. Item B, under city attorney, is a resolution approving an annexation clarification. This is a small housekeeping measure that Devin has been talking with the GIS folks at Planning and Zoning. It's a small correction to a deed description. Is that right, Devin?
Yeah, in the course of reviewing a lot of our GIS data and annexations, Whitley discovered a couple of flawed annexations, essentially. So we had that resurveyed, and the Secretary of State will accept a resolution making this correction.
Good. If there are no questions about that, is there a motion for approval?
Motion, Mayor. I'll do
Connie?
second.
All right, thank you, Connie. Just a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Thank you. Going on to the highlight of the evening, the finance department. Stacy, I think you put these on the agenda in exactly the right order. So you can give the council a quarterly update and the best foundation that you can for the budget presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. Let me make sure I do have permission to share my screen, so give me one moment. I will pull up my general fund analysis that I share each quarter. And again, with this, we just kind of touch on our 5 most impactful revenues, and I just wanted to briefly go over these. So the first one, of course, payroll taxes, which is our largest revenue source in our budget. You can see here through the month of March that we have collected 10.3 million, and we actually still have a small second payment that will be forthcoming from the Revenue Commission for March. So we have 3 months still left to collect and be remitted to us from the Revenue Commission. Back in early March, we amended the budget to reflect our revenue trends for this year, and we budgeted 12.5 million. So we're currently at 82% of the budget, at about 75% through the year. So we're doing good. And as you can see here, we are running about $1 million ahead of where we were at this time last year. So we're doing good. Payroll withholding revenues, which are a good indicator of our local economy, are strong. As we've mentioned previously, our Toyota incentive payment for this current fiscal year and the upcoming fiscal year will be 1.2 million. And that's about 700,000 less than it was in fiscal year 2020. So part of us being $1 million ahead is due to the incentive payments being lower this year, but we also have a small amount of growth as well. And you'll see this play out in my projections for next year's revenue as well, because if we bring in on average $1 million for the next 3 months, then this number would be 13.3 to end the year. So you can kind of get an idea of where we're at today, and you'll see how that plays into the projected revenue soon.
So in a way,
I'm going to move on to net profit.
just in a way, we don't have the luxury of simply budgeting for a year. We have to project out 15 months. It just adds a little more doubt into the picture.
Yes. Flipping the screen to our net profits. As mentioned, this is our most volatile revenue source simply because we don't know how those returns will come in each year. This was our most uncertain revenue when it came to how COVID and the pandemic would affect our local economy and our businesses. Thankfully, our businesses have not laid off employees, but whether or not their profits have stayed the same. We budgeted $1,050,000, which is a bit lower than we typically do. We typically budget about $1.5 million. And as you can see, through March, we've collected $1.9 million. We're about $157,000 ahead of where we were at this time last year. However, as you'll notice on the June line item, at the end of the year, we always have to account for credits. Many taxpayers file returns and carry a credit balance, and we cannot recognize those credits as revenue until at which point they finally owe those taxes. They file a return and owe the taxes, and the credit balance goes away. I had asked Scott for an update on where we were, and as of the day the information came to me, we were about 1.8 million in credits. So once we've gone through all of our collections for this fiscal year, I'll come down to the month of June, and if the credits at June 30, 2021 are still 1.8 million, it will reduce the overall income for the year. So I think we were right in still being conservative with this budget estimate. We still have a few months to see how it plays out exactly. And you'll see that we were conservative with it in the upcoming budget as well, as our economy begins to recover. Insurance premium tax. Obviously, we've been talking about this one a lot lately with our new tax revenue or adjustment of the rate. And you can see here the first 2 quarters collections through March are at about 1.787 million. If you average that out over 4 quarters, I'm projecting that we'll collect approximately $3,575,000 as of the end of the year. So we had amended this budget recently to put it back up to 3.4 million, but I think we'll come in around 175,000 ahead of that fairly easily. So, and then we'll talk about, obviously, but this is the one that we adjusted the rate from 5% to 8% effective July 1. So you will see that new revenue coming into our budget presentation in just a little bit. Property taxes, obviously the majority of these are collected in the fall. So today we have collected $2,057,000. Back in February, we had amended this to $2,025,000, which was the actual collections at the time. So we have since collected just a little bit more since then. And lastly, our alcoholic beverage regulatory fees. I have the numbers for the first 3 quarters here through March. And you can see we've collected $1,008,902. We budgeted 1.1. So it is very likely that we are going to collect more than budgeted, probably around $1.3 million. If that last quarter holds steady with what it has been in the past, it'll probably be at least 300 to 350,000. So, and we talked previously that this is the one revenue source that has not been impacted by the pandemic at all. If anything, it has actually improved over the last year. So, and any questions about these 5 revenue sources or the numbers shown here? Okay, you will be receiving this document along with the more detailed expense quarterly budget report in your email from Tracy. You may already have it, but that has been sent to you. So, Mayor, I'll let you tee up the next topic.
that report is very important, I think, for you all to be able to receive this next report of our recommended budget. Thankfully, our payroll taxes did not collapse the way there was the potential for that to happen at the first of the year. Could not be more proud of the way our local business community handled themselves, and some of our larger manufacturers ensured that their protocols allowed them to stay open rather than run the risk. So we benefited from all that good work, and very, very proud that that was done. The net profits taxes obviously were impacted, and what we'll project for this coming year are going to be the funds that were earned a year previously when things weren't so good. So we've kept those projections pretty modest as well. But just a couple of comments before we go through, and Stacy and Andrew have done, I think, a really good job of helping me, helping all of us understand what is a pretty complex budget situation and the changes that we've been through for the last 14 months. So I'm glad that we have those people helping us with this. 14 months ago, budgeting in particular got very different and very difficult. Obviously, our lives got very difficult, but budgeting certainly became hard for something like this. And we responded by asking our department heads to prepare us bare bones budgets. We promised not to cut staff, and we promised not to cut salaries. And we were able to keep those promises. But we did ask department heads to cut non-salary expenses. So there was some pain involved in their budget. And we asked them to forego things. And they responded well, and they helped work out the budgets that we worked out with you. We know that the experience last year was mixed, but the situation today is very different. It's stronger. First, we know from Stacy's report that things are considerably stronger, and we have some sense of the way things are going. This last year was greatly benefited from our perspective by the CARES allocations that we were able to spend on necessary salary costs and make our budgets balance. So those funds were helpful. What we asked our department heads to do this year was to begin advocating for their departments again. We didn't not let them talk about those things. In fact, we encouraged them to talk with us in a very businesslike way about what they had deferred previously and what they thought was necessary now. And we've reported to you all that because of that exercise, our requests were significantly higher than what our revenue estimates were to start with. That's kind of a process that Stacy and I have each year. But this year we were able to do it with more flexibility than we've ever had before as we constructed the budget. And that makes it a little more complex, but a little more opportunity, I think, woven in it. We've already told you a little bit about the fact that we've used some additional columns in the budget this year. There are some expenses that we believe are appropriate for the American Recovery Plan Act. We'll refer to those as ARPA funds. And we've got a new column for delay. But Stacy will work through all that procedurally with you when she shows you this budget. There will be a point during Stacy's presentation where we will ask you to focus very specifically on salaries, because salaries are going to be a big part of this budget and a big part of our conversation. We know that for 2 years, we've had the conversations about our financial analysis and what we thought the remedies for those were. Council took a pretty strong step at the end of last calendar year and gave first responder raises. And what you'll see tonight, I think, is the balance of those raises that were called for in our economic analysis. You will see steps that will allow us to make sure that beginning police officers and beginning firefighters have the same salary at $49,500 per year after they're incentive tied. We budget all of that, but $4,000 comes from the incentive package. You'll see those raises in there, and you'll see. But I want to specifically draw your attention to those raises so we can talk about them. And I can explain to you the rationale for everyone in there. I'm going to show you some increases for City Hall folks later, and the market information that gives me the confidence to do that. Big thing you're not going to see in this year's budget is any use of prior year revenue. This will be the first budget that we've passed in 6 years that does not use any prior year's revenue. A whole lot of content in here. I also, at the beginning of this presentation, I want the council to understand that the budget that we will be reviewing is a compromise budget. And it is a compromise between the mayor and the council members of the Finance Committee. We did not agree. We agreed on virtually everything. And philosophically, we do agree with everything. We disagree on timing on one issue. So I believe it's that small of a disagreement, but nonetheless, it required a compromise between us to be able to bring you a budget from all of us. And we'll go into that in more detail when Stacy comes across that in the budget, or David and Connie are here, and at the right point, we'll talk about all of this. But this is the product of a compromise, so that we did not have to present two budgets to the council. We present one budget because we are alike in our thinking on almost every part of it, is what my feeling is, and they can speak now or later. So Finance Committee, do you all want to comment, or you want Stacy just to present this document?
I'm good with Stacy presenting it, and like you said, at the appropriate time, we can make comments, as needed.
Okay.
Yes, I agree. Stacy can move ahead. Thank you.
Good. Well, Stacy, then you've got a number of PowerPoint slides, and I'll turn it over to you to. The other thing that you won't see much, we used to show you what we didn't put in the budget. And this year, we've made every effort to work through with our department heads what is really important to them. And if we didn't fund it this year, you might just see it in the delay column. So I'll stop now. Stacy, please go ahead.
All right. me just tuck my view away here so I can see all the screen. So I hope my PowerPoint is up on the screen at this point. I'll just start with the general.
Stacey, I was just going to tell them they can minimize looking at each other if they just want to see the screen alone.
Yes.
You can just click on those buttons up at the top of us. Okay.
All right. So what you'll see here is the budget presentation. I'll go through this, and after the meeting is over, I will email you a copy of this presentation as well as the formal mayor's proposed budget workbook. All of that will be emailed to you by first thing in the morning. And we've broken everything down in this presentation. I think it covers everything that's in that document as well as some notes I've made. So the first thing you'll see is just our budget presentation overview. This focuses on the general fund. And as we stated, the projected general fund revenues for fiscal year 22 are $27,699,097. And this is about $3.5 million over last year, or a 14.7% increase in projected revenues. And that is based on the amended budget from February, not the adopted. So it's 3.5 above the amended budget. Our proposed expenses are $27,693,519. And that is about 2.8 million, or 11.5% above last year's amended budget. And as the mayor said, we had a lot more requests than we put in. I think initially the requested budget column had about 32 million in it. So we have pared that down into, as the mayor mentioned, we'll talk more about the ARPA, American Rescue Plan funds, as well as deferring some items to either a mid-year amendment or a future budget. Total new request from the departments was about 7.6 million. These were capital requests, personnel, salary adjustments, and out of those new expenses, we funded about 6.1 million, or 80% of those. So the rest you'll see in our deferred column. And finally, as the mayor already mentioned, our budget balances with a small surplus of $5,578. That was something that was very important to our finance committee. So, and mayor, so we wanted to show that. And obviously with the Toyota incentive and with the COVID pandemic, we have had to use reserves to balance our budgets in the past. But thankfully, with the economy recovering, the Toyota incentive finally dropping down to about 1.2 million, we are able to budget surplus. So, and our new revenue sources, of course, and we'll talk about those more in just a minute. These are just some broad categories to show you the revenue changes from last year's budget. Taxes are $2,697,900 in the current year budget. And you can see that's just a tiny little bit above last year. So property taxes are up, motor vehicle taxes are up just a little bit. Occupational license fees, that is obviously our largest revenue group. It includes our payroll taxes, excuse me, and our net profits. We are budgeting that at $14,651,000. And between the two, that breaks down. We are budgeting $13.6 million for payroll taxes. That is $1.1 million more than our amended budget. And we talked about that a little bit in our quarterly finance update right before this. For net profits, we budgeted an even $1 million. We still have a lot of uncertainty around the timing of when some of those returns will be filed for 2020, 2021. And also, we know that a lot of companies are carrying those credit balances, and we don't know how long it will take for them to fully recover with their profits to be able to use those credit balances up. So we wanted to be very conservative when budgeting net profits. So we kept it at around $1 million. The insurance premium tax, that is under the permits and licenses categories. It is this whole category is 6,175,300. But for insurance premium tax specifically, fiscal year 2021 budget was 3.4 million. And the 2022 budget with our adjusted rate will be 5,760,000. So that's about a $2.3 million increase over the current budget for insurance premium taxes. And that is a result of our rate changing from 5% to 8% effective July 1. You'll see franchise fees. A lot of this is with our utilities, our garbage, hydrants, about 1.6 million. Intergovernmental, a lot of this is obviously the county's half of our interlocal agreements that they pay to us, as well as some other items such as our incentive pay that we receive from the state or reimbursed from the state, about 2.2 million. Just a reminder, our dispatch services are now funded by the 911 fee, and they are in their own fund now, so they are not part of this general fund revenue comparison. So just wanted to make note of that. Okay. And this is just a general trend graphic. I like to have a few of these in so we can see how our revenue has trended for the past 10 years, from 2020 to 21 budget to projected. So as you can see, in 2019, 2020, our revenue stayed fairly static, around 25.6 to 25.1 million. Our 2021 amended budget had 24.1 million. And as mentioned before, our 2022 projected revenue is about 27.699 million. So you can see that the dips, obviously 2016 kind of being our highest, and then we've kind of stayed fairly steady. And then with our new revenue sources, we're seeing an increase in this fiscal year. And sorry, go ahead, Mayor.
No, I'm just leaning in to hear better.
Okay, sorry, I thought you said something. Again, our employee withholding showing the same trend on it. And obviously this one was affected by the Toyota incentive. So that's why you see the drastic drop from 2015 to 2016. That is when our $2.5 million incentive payment to Toyota kicked in. Since then, we have started to see some growth through natural growth in our economy. And beginning 2019, 2020, our incentive began to decrease. And so that helped with our payroll tax trends. I believe we paid in 2020, we paid about 1.9 million in incentive. In fiscal year 2021, again, we'll pay 1.2 million in incentive, and projecting the 13.6 million for 2022. So with the incentive decreasing and our local economy continuing to grow as it has for the last several years, we're beginning to see that revenue line item go up. Net profits. This one always has the one anomaly that has not fallen off yet. I'll always remind you that in 2016, we received a very large revised tax return from a previous year. So as always, that particular year is much higher than any of the others. But as you can see, since 2018, that kind of tells our picture of where we've been the last 4 to 5 years. Much lower than what we have been in the past on average. Starting with 2018, it's 1.3 million, 1.5 million, 1.7 million. And with the credits that we've got, we're anticipating around 1 to 1.1 million for this year and next. Now we're moving on to the expenditures for the general fund. As the mayor mentioned, we asked our departments to advocate strongly for what they needed across all revenue categories. And I want to remind that, as the mayor said, these look like large increases, but for both fiscal year 2020 and fiscal year 2021, we cut line items on a lot of our budgets. Those were both hard budgets where Andrew and I sat down with each department and went through, and we'd cut 500 out of this line item, 2,000 out of this one. So they're definitely making up for what we've cut out the last 2 years, as we tried to be as conservative as possible. So they're asking for some increases to go back to their previous level budgets, as well as some new line items that they need for operating. As you'll see, the largest increases are in police, fire, and public works. And those are obviously the three departments where the most steps have been taken towards addressing salary and personnel needs, as you'll see coming up in a couple of slides. So those you will see, administration is pretty much flat. That includes city hall, city clerk, council, our debt payments. Those expenses are flat pretty much from year to year. You'll see our interlocals nonprofits has showed small decrease. As you'll see when we talk about ARPA a little bit more, we're able to use ARPA for some of those community service organizations, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. And then our transfers to other funds went down just a little bit because we don't have to transfer quite as much to our capital projects this year. And as mentioned before, our proposed general fund expenditures are 27.6 million. And just one more overview, a way of looking at our expenditures by category. And the thing we always want to emphasize here is that 52% of our general fund budget is spent on public safety, and that is police and fire. And the one note I'll make, you'll see the note at the bottom, this does include the alcohol fund expenditures for police to show the true cost of that function. But 52% of our budget is spent on police and fire. The second largest expenditure after our public safety, that's at 19%, is our interlocals. That includes our half of the county services, revenue commission, parks and rec, P&Z. So all of those lumped together are 19% of the budget, which is our second highest category. And only 10% of the budget is spent on the administrative, executive, legislative branches of our government. And again, a reminder that dispatch is fully funded by our new 911 fee and the county's half of their revenues. The general fund is not contributing anything to dispatch 911 in the upcoming budget, thanks to that new service fee that council passed in the fall. I'll talk a little bit about the first couple of these, and then I'm sure the mayor will have some things he will want to say on this as well. As he mentioned previously, the adjustments for police and fire that we've been talking about all year. 3,600 increase to starting pay for police officers, 6,919.68 increase to starting pay for firefighters, and that will equalize the starting pay at approximately 49,500. And I have shown here the total increases that those two starting positions would have received since 2020. So it will have been a total of 8,600 for police officers and 11,919.68 for firefighters to starting pay. And just to comment on those, no firefighter or police officer is proposed to receive less than the 3,600 or the 6,920 in the upcoming budget. However, we did propose some adjustments to some of the police ranks in sergeants and lieutenants due to longevity, due to the fact that we had supervisors making less than some of the police officers. So we did make some adjustments in those ranks, ranging from the 3,600 up to $8,000. And lastly, the one I'll speak to, we talked about in our financial presentation, that we've had a lot of trouble, especially in sanitation, retaining and hiring workers. We're losing them to the private sector. So our sanitation workers, maintenance workers, we're proposing their starting pay be increased to $15 an hour and our CDL drivers or equipment operators starting pay be increased to $18 an hour. And again, that affects positions in certain departments such as cemetery, public works, sanitation, and recycling. And then there's a couple of small adjustments that were requested by departments. There's one building inspector that they requested a 6% increase instead of 3% because of some additional duties that he performs. There was a additional request for code enforcement officers of $3,000 instead of COLA, and a couple of admin assistants that were paid less than admin assistants with their same experience. It's about a $4,000 increase for those two admin assistants to get them within equalized to another admin assistant that's been here the same amount of time. So, and then lastly, as mentioned with the police ranks, public works and sanitation crew leaders, we proposed an $8,000 increase to have them be, once we make the worker and driver adjustments, it warranted just adjusting those crew leaders as well. They also hold their CDL. They are CDL drivers as well. So it warranted a slightly higher increase for them. But I'll let the mayor finish talking about the salary adjustments if you would like this time.
Thank you, Devin. These are, we think, an appropriate byproduct of the market analysis that we've been doing for the last 2 years. We have a pretty good handle on what other cities, what other departments are doing, and we knew that these police and fire salaries need to change. We knew that some of the public works salaries needed to change. And I've been aware for some times that we have a couple, we have 2 or 3 salaries within City Hall that have been very low, and I have proposed changes to those. Probably, and I'll walk you through each of these. The analysis, Andrew, that you and Stacy did for me on these positions, is it available, or do we want to send that to the council?
I'm happy to send it out. It's data that we pulled from several different sources, so there's not one thing that they can go to.
Okay. Yeah, let's, Stacy, when we send out all these budget documents to the council, please make sure they can see what I've done for each of the salaries in City Hall. We've shown you what our cities similar to us are, what the KLC wage and hour survey says the average is, what is the average of the cities that are around our size, and what our current pay for these several positions are. And then there's a recommendation. I'm recommending that the city attorney salary be increased to $90,000. That is a substantial increase, and it is still leaves Devin less than the average of her peers. She is an experienced city attorney now, and that salary is warranted for now. I have asked that Finance Director Stacy Clark get closer to what her peer average is in the typical city administration. And I've asked that Stacy's pay be raised to $100,000 from the current 87, I believe. I have asked a lesser adjustment to Megan's salary. In Mr. Hartley's case, when you see the data, you'll see that he is, folks like to talk about it, but he is significantly underpaid from his peers. But all I've asked for in this salary schedule for Andrew is a 3% cost of living increase. That's all I've recommended for Arlene. but there are some other adjustments that warrant your attention, and we'll give you the information to justify them. Stacy, I don't have all of those notes that, let's see, are some of those notes are on my pages as well, aren't they?
Yes, you should have a printout of the slideshow and it has the notes in it. And of course, when I send this out to council, I'll send them the version with the notes as well.
Yeah, please do, because the notes really draw the attention.
Mhm.
Stacy's already mentioned to you the slightly larger raise of $4,200 to the fire administrative assistant. Police, there's a range for, she's already mentioned police lieutenants and sergeants. The specific raises are Miss Golden to be raised from $67,000 to $90,000. A 3% raise for Devin would have been $2,000. The finance director is recommended to go to $100,000, up from $84,500. The HR director is a lesser increase to $95,000, up from $91,658. So you will have an opportunity to see those and review those and talk to us about them. Thanks, Stacy.
All right. As the mayor mentioned previously, any employees that are not receiving a specific salary adjustment, we are recommending a 3% cost of living increase. Something we've been talking about for a while is the CERS rates going up. We know they're scheduled to go up for the next few years. For fiscal year 21, the legislature froze the rates to be the same as 2020 as a result of the pandemic to try to give cities a little bit of a break. But for next year, they are going to proceed with those increases. So our new hazardous contribution rate will be 44.33%, and our new non-hazardous contribution rate will be 26.95%. And you can see how that compares to the previous rates. That is about a $371,000 increase, I believe, from the previous year for the CERS increases. Our proposed employee contributions for medical, dental, and vision are remaining the same as fiscal year 2021. That's always important to our employees when we're giving it doesn't look like we're giving them a cost of living, then we subsequently raise the benefits as well. We're always reviewing those to make sure that what our employees pay is fair to them and to us, but proposed for this coming year would be to keep them the same. And as mentioned throughout this presentation and another piece of it here, the total salary adjustments in COLA are expected to cost approximately $1.245 million. After reviewing the guidance from the American Rescue Plan, the more specific guidance, which just came out today, but we have been given some broad guidelines previously, it is able to be used for salary increases for essential employees. And we are proposing to use $797,643 of ARPA to pay for some of these increases. That would be for police, fire, public works employees, our sanitation employees. This is for employees who are essential or employees who have to show up to do their job. They can't work remotely. So they have been on the front lines during the pandemic, and we are allowed to use these funds for that. Typically, we do not encourage using one-time revenue for recurring expenses, but these funds are specifically meant for this. And as the mayor mentioned previously, for fiscal year 20 and the current fiscal year, we did receive some CARES Act funding, and we did use it to pay for police and fire salary and related expenses at the encouragement of the Department of Local Government. many cities used it for that because we were encouraged that that was one of the specific guidelines that we could use it for. So we've got many other uses that we'll be looking at for the ARPA funds. But part of it we are looking at to pay for some of these salary increases. Let's see. There we go. Personnel overview, as the mayor mentioned, we asked our departments to advocate, and we've been talking about some of these positions for a long time, probably for a year, with the initial financial presentation that we did. So in the general fund, we're proposing the following new positions: 5 police officers, and this is a first step. We've talked about adding 5 a year for the next 3 years to try to get us closer to per capita average as our peers and the FBI standards. 2 part-time police officers. This is permanently funding 2 part-time police officers. They're currently on staff. They have been paying for these officers with their vacancies. However, these officers assist on patrol. They assist in the evidence room, which allows a full-time patrol officer to be on the streets instead of in the evidence room. They have found them to be very beneficial. We are recommending, we have 2 victims of crime advocates. One is full-time, one is currently part-time. We are recommending that the second victims of crime advocate become full-time. And the cost you see there is the cost just to transition that from a part-time to a full-time position. This would be effective July 1. However, in our current grant application that's due later this week, we are requesting funding to make that position full-time. We won't know about the results of that grant until the fall, and it would be effective beginning October 1. So if we do receive funding to make that second position full-time from the grant, effective October 1, those costs would transition from the general fund to the grant fund. We have included a fire battalion chief of training. This is something they've been asking for a little while as a training officer. And we have included 1 maintenance worker and 1 maintenance driver for public works. This was also part of our presentation that we presented to you a couple of months ago. The 911 fund, as mentioned, is fully funded from the service fee, CMRS state revenue, and the county's portion of that interlocal. When we adopted that fee, we mentioned at the time that it would help fund these positions. They have requested an assistant coordinator, 4 full-time dispatchers, and 2 part-time dispatchers. Much like police, they have hired the 2 part-time dispatchers with their vacancies, but this would permanently fund those positions. And they're great for filling in here and there when they need shift coverage. And the benefit of this is with the part-time dispatchers, we're often able to get experienced dispatchers who spend a little bit of time working in another city, but can also work part-time for us, so we don't have to go through the training of a new dispatcher. So it helps relieve some of that burden with overtime. Our cemetery fund, we are recommending a new equipment operator and a new maintenance worker. This doesn't actually increase the amount of people that are currently working in the cemetery. Our cemetery has used a temp agency to provide 2 full-time workers for quite some time now. And what this does is take those 2 temp personnel and make them city employees. So obviously there's a little bit of a higher pay rate coming on as city employees, and then we have to provide benefits. But what this allows is, with temp personnel from an agency, our sexton cannot leave those employees unsupervised. We only have 2 city employees at the cemetery right now. So if one of them is out on medical leave and the other one needs to be off sick or take a vacation, then the temp help is not allowed to be out there working. So this will allow those 2 positions to become city employees so that they can work without direct supervision. Obviously, they'll be supervised, but they'll be able to work when our sexton is on vacation or, has to be away from the cemetery for any particular reason. So, and we will still utilize some tip help for seasonal landscaping during the warmer months. But again, this takes those full-time positions and converts them. And as mentioned at the bottom, we have a few positions that we've elected to defer, hopefully to a mid-year budget amendment. That is 1 maintenance worker and 1 driver for Public Works and 4 firefighters. So, if there's no comments on that, I'll move on to our capital expenditures.
Hey, Stace, can I
Yeah.
ask a quick question?
Yes.
How much were we forecasting the 911 fee to be? I was thinking when we passed it, it was $900,000, but I might be getting that confused with
yes.
the 911 fee.
That's okay. I have that note. Let me find it. So when we first passed it, of course, we didn't begin collections until December or January. So it was only for half a year. But for a full year, for next year, we're estimating about $1,130,000.
Okay.
And that's with the fee going to $7 a month effective July 1. I believe that was part of that. That was part of that ordinance, was a stepped increase on that fee.
Okay.
So beginning July 1, it's $7 a month.
Thank you.
And that's based on 13,461 occupied units, which of course we're still working with GMWSS to make sure we have all occupied units accounted for correctly, but that's what that was based on.
Okay.
Stacy, you've got more of the budget, but just because it's in perfect context, I think it's okay here, David, Connie. The nature of our compromise exists on this page. I had proposed that we hire the 4 firefighters along with the training officer in this year's budget, and the fire committee agreed with 1,000 pieces of this budget, but they can explain to you that they felt that 4 of the firefighters should be delayed until we have another revenue step, I believe. But that was the nature of the compromise. I felt that I had made enough of a commitment to the council that I wanted to include funding of both the police and fire, and the committee saw it slightly differently as far as timing. So the nature of our compromise is right here on this page. And David, I hope that's a fair explanation, and I'll let you and Connie explain that too.
Point of information first, Mayor, before you go to them. I think you said the fire committee agreed to this compromise. I think you meant the finance committee, unless I misheard you.
Though I probably misspoke,
Okay.
Will. Absolutely, I meant the council members of the finance committee.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
No, you said it well, Mayor. At least from my perspective, and I think from Connie's perspective, we felt like we have made enormous strides for the fire department and really for all emergency services. Within the last 12 months, we've taken the pay increase has been almost to the tune of $12,000 within a 1-year period. And to us, getting their pay to the average of the median communities that were a part of our study was the most important thing that we could do. And the other part of that was, I don't think we were wanting to dip into reserves to try to balance the budget. So, there were a couple things at play here. We felt like that bringing on the additional staffing for the police department was more of a priority. And I think that's where our focus was. Looking at this in the future is just where we felt like it really needed to be. At least that's from my perspective. I'll be glad to go on, but that's just kind of a quick summary.
Thank you.
Yes, and if I might add, I felt like that we only had so much money from the revenue from the insurance premium tax. And I wanted to make sure that we stayed within the means of that money that we were going to be getting. And the other thing is that even with the ARPA funds, it's one-time money. And we were concerned about, funding payroll with that for any position, and have to have that that occurring revenue stream that we still haven't got there yet. So we felt like that was really important as well. And along with what David had said, I just wanted to reiterate that. But yes, it is a compromise, and I appreciate it, Mayor, very much.
Mayor, may I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
To you and the Finance Committee, one of the things that is concerning of the future of Georgetown has been the increase in the crime that's in this community, and it seems to be on everybody's forethought. Is having 5 new officers enough to help us get over that particular problem?
Not completely, Karen, but 5 is the amount that Chief Bossy is on here, and I'll let him speak to that. I think 5 is what we thought we could reasonably get hired within a budget year. To put 10 or 15 in there may not help, because he may not be able to do that. Chief Bossy, are you still on? That's all, both Assistant Chief Allgood and Chief Bossy, I thought.
Can you hear me? Hello.
Oh, thanks, Chief. Did you hear Karen's question?
I did, and I think you answered it appropriately, sir. I think if we try to bring too many people in too soon, we'll suffer on training and acclimation into the culture of the police department and our expectations. So I think it's best to do it slowly and properly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead. I think somebody was going to go ahead. Whoever was going to ask that question, I'll wait a second.
Oh, no, it was me. It was Stacy. Go ahead.
Oh, I'd like to ask 2 quick questions, and it was on the previous slide that we just looked at.
Okay.
It's in regards to, it's about halfway down the page, about the 3% COLA for the employees that are not mentioned. My question, or my 2 questions would be, I should say, is it possible to find out how many employees are covered in that 3% COLA? And then also maybe the positions of those individuals that would be within that 3% COLA?
Yes. I think, Stacy, that's something you could generate pretty easily, couldn't you?
Yes, absolutely. When you receive the budget document, it will have everyone's annual salary listed, but it doesn't say exactly which raise they're receiving. You just see the total annual salary. So when I email these documents out in the morning, it won't take me long to put together a list, because I can easily copy and paste which positions are receiving the 3%.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
could I have you speak to the philosophy that you had to compromise on, and also if Chief Colson would like to speak about the ramifications of this compromise as well, so we can have a fulsome conversation?
Yes, ma'am. I'd be glad to. My original preparation of the budget that included each of the police officers and the firefighters was largely predicated on the commitments that I had made. When I presented all of this information, I presented it with data and with financial projections. And I indicated these people being hired in those financial projections. I also, Willow, knew that I had brought data supporting a fee increase on the insurance premium tax. And the data that I brought to present that fee increase included my intention to hire the 5 firefighters in the coming budget year. So I felt that I had, from an integrity point of view, I had a responsibility to present those 5 firefighters in this budget. The evolution of thought, if you will, from when I learned of Connie and David's concerns and incorporated those into the budget that we showed Connie and David used $457,000 of prior year's revenue. We've done that periodically. In fact, we've done it a fair amount, but their request that be removed was not unreasonable. In talking with Chief Colson, and I'll let him talk for himself, but in talking with Chief Colson, I recognize that much like Chief Bossy, Chief Colson is going to have some very real practical limitations on how quickly he can hire people. And we concluded that it was probably at least 3 to 4 months before Chief Colson could practically get to the point of hiring someone. And if I had council members that felt strongly on this issue, I did not want an outcome, neither did Connie and David, Willow, of bringing the council more than one budget option. We all three felt a responsibility to try and avoid that. So we tried in good faith at a committee meeting on Friday, and we left without concluding that. And we tried again over the weekend on a compromise position, and we were successful. I think our philosophies are aligned. It's merely a matter of timing. And importantly, very importantly, Willow, many things are going to be determined on the next revenue step that we take. Even our commitments to hire more policemen in years 2 and 3, and to eventually build another fire station, all of those are predicated on the next step of a revenue source. If we have a good plan and we presented good data, and I can assure you that in the last couple of months, Andrew, Stacy, and I and others have been busily at work crafting different models of a gross receipts plan and different ways to give different size businesses assurances. And we've only begun to talk about the possibilities there. And we think that this decision, this compromise, even increases our need to continue to consider that additional revenue source. So it ultimately, I set aside what I'd included in the projections in favor of what might be better timing that the committee has suggested.
Well, thank you, because I listened to the entire finance committee from Friday, and it seemed like it ended inconclusive. And so I'm glad to hear that there were compromising discussions that took place over the weekend and today to bring this a budget to the floor, and that you feel good about it. And I don't know if Chief Colson has any comments to add.
Yeah, please do, Chief.
Yeah, I'll just, I watched the finance meeting on Friday as well. And obviously, the outlook from that was not what we had hoped for. And I worked with the mayor worked with finance committee to, have some conversations to provide information on the true situation of the fire department. And in that like the mayor said, we're not ready to hire on July 1. We need an application period. We were going to extend our application period into the new fiscal year because of money for advertising and things like that. So the reality of another recruit class for us is September, October timeframe anyway. Most likely by the time we take applications, we conduct our process, make job offers, 2-week notices, all that stuff takes time. So the finance committee was indicating that 3 months, 6 months, they just needed some more time, and that time's kind of already built in there, quite honestly. And I feel like, I've always been told you can't make everyone happy, and we're not exactly getting what we want. We are thankful for all the things that are in the budget that are new for us, and the raises and a lot of positive things to look at in this budget for the fire department. And I think, just looking big picture and timeline and working with the mayor and the finance committee, feel like the commitment's still there to get the additional 4 individuals. We're just a little bit premature with needing this budget approved and where they feel comfortable in making that decision. So, like I say, again, it's not necessarily what we hope for, but we appreciate everything we are getting, and we look forward to continuing to climb the mountain that's in front of us. But I'm satisfied with the outcome, and I appreciate Mayor Prather and Council Member Lusby and Tackett on working with me and trying to find a compromise that helped us still progress and add to the head count. And this is a very much needed position for our department, and it has been for a while. So again, just thank everybody for what we are getting.
Well, I think it's really important in defense of the finance committee and in defense of, frankly, everybody that worked on this, reaching an impasse. We have different points of view, and reaching an impasse that is settled with a good discussion and staying on the same page, and gives us the opportunity to do this work collaboratively in the future. I'm more than happy to orchestrate a delay that meets some people's well-founded concerns.
Well, that's all very helpful. Thank you so much. And thank you, Chief Colson, for your work on this, and for David and Connie and the mayor for coming up with a compromise. That's rare these days.
Okay. Well, we wanted to, and David and Connie, I'll give you all the last word, and then I'll turn Stacy loose to complete the budget presentation.
Well, Mayor, gosh, I'm not sure where to start, but we've got to thank the prior council as well, because if we hadn't got the 911 fee passed, we wouldn't be having any of these conversations. If we didn't get the insurance premiums, the increase passed with this group, we wouldn't be having these conversations. And because of these things, we've been able to address the most important issue, and that's getting the pay in line with the competing communities that are out there that we have to compete with. The chief was in contact with me quite a bit during the 911 discussions, last year, and again during the insurance premium tax increase. And I assured him that I would do everything I could, from a position of one of 8 people, I'd do everything I could to facilitate getting both of those passed. And that was achieved with 8-0 votes, which is unbelievable when it comes to a council like this. And I want to commend everybody that was involved with it, those from the past and all of you that were involved with it now. So I look at it as being very positive. I can't imagine being disappointed or upset with what we're looking at. This is unbelievable. To come out of the past year with where it could have been and where we are is unbelievable. I think we're blessed. We're very fortunate. And I want to keep a positive attitude and move forward. I don't know when I'll be ready personally to look at bringing on new people and in the future doing a new station, but it is inevitable. I mean, we all know that. So for the moment, I want to focus on doing what we can for our personnel. Connie, I'll let you finish from there.
Well, you said it well, David. I feel the same way. I feel like we've came a long way from where we were last year. And, you know, we're doing a lot of positive things with the raises. I feel like the city employees definitely are well deserving. They hung in there with us when things were really bad and doing the bare bones budget with us. And you're right, you know, the council helping us with the 911 and the insurance premium tax. I mean, we all know and see where we need to go in the future. So I think we're blessed as well, and we need to be positive about this and be thankful that we're able to do what we're doing. I know I am. I feel like almost giddy that we're able to do this actually for our employees. So thank you, and thank you, Mayor.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, if there are no more questions about that, we can always talk more about that later.
Mayor, if I may.
Go ahead.
On the 911 center, can someone give a little background? It looks like we're increasing by 5 full-time equivalents, especially in the assistant coordinator position. Can someone address that a little bit? What we're seeing there?
Yeah, I'll ask Chief Bossy. Brian Moore is not on the call with us tonight, Greg, but I can ask Chief Bossy to begin to address it. Dispatch has been, just from a historical perspective, dispatch has been clamoring for 4 additional dispatchers for several years now. And I think they're having trouble with having to do 10-hour shifts and do some pretty heroic things to get by right now. It does seem like a lot. It's been a repeated effort. Chief Bossy, can you help with specifics? Chief, you still on? I'm looking through. I'm looking through all the windows.
He's there. He's on the thing.
I'll if he chimes in here in a second, I'll be quiet. But one thing I may be able to help you with, Greg, is as David mentioned in the fall, I believe it was late September, October, we adopted a 911 fee. It was initially set at $6 per month per occupied unit. July 1 of this year, it goes up to $7 per month. And July 1 of 2022, it goes up to $8 per month. This is considered a service fee, much like a utility. We're looking at 911 as if it were a utility to be used. And that fee is set aside and can only be used for the 911 dispatch services. So when we set that money aside and set the fee at those rates, it was with the intention of adding these positions, since that is all that revenue can be used for. And as the mayor mentioned, they have been desperate for new dispatchers due to increased call volume for several years. They've made that case. We had just not been at a position to add those positions. And with the service fee, we're now able to add all of those positions, but there are no general fund dollars going towards these new positions. So I can at least speak to that part as far as the funding.
Hey, Stace, can I mention something from the Finance Committee's perspective?
Yes.
You're right. The mayor said it. You know, these positions have been requested for quite some time. And quite honestly, when you think about it, if we can't get that call and the dispatcher can't do what they need to do, it doesn't matter how many police officers you have or how many firefighters you have. So this is an important connection that's just imperative. And I feel like we've put it off for quite some time because of our financial situation. And with the passing of the 911 fee, we all felt at that time that would make this a reality.
Thanks, Stacy and David. Appreciate that.
Yes, sir. But Greg, I still think you deserve an answer from a police / dispatch source, and I'll have Chief Bossy get with you on that.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, sir. Okay, well, thank you, Stacy.
Yes. Appreciate the questions. Thank you all. As the mayor said, personnel and these salary adjustments has been the focus of this budget and the things we hope to accomplish with our new revenue sources. So appreciate the questions. And if you have any that come up over the next few weeks as we continue this process, please don't hesitate to email me and ask any additional questions, and the mayor and I will respond to those. Moving on to capital expenditures. As mentioned, the last couple of years, we have deferred most of our smaller capital projects. We had been focusing on a couple of large projects and some vehicle replacement, but most things have been deferred. So the first things you'll see listed here, Lanes Run Business Park, that project is essentially complete. However, the gas lines are installed. If Eddie was on here, he could probably correct me, but the gas lines are installed as they determine what size pipes they need as those lots are sold and buildings constructed. So that will go in phases, in stages. So we will continue to carry that money in the budget until the gas line installation is complete. Half of that will be funded by the county, and the half that is funded by the city was already transferred to the business fund in fiscal year 19. So it's already sitting there just waiting to be used. The same with these next three projects. Our CMAT grant for the Cardinal Drive project, the TAP grant match for the West Main Street project. As you can see, we have $205,000 and $167,000 remaining to match those grants. So that is in the capital projects fund. All of that, with a small exception on TAP, was also transferred in fiscal year 19. TAP will require an additional $48,750. And when you get the line item budget, you'll see that we're transferring that money to the capital projects fund. And that's a result of our last amendment to the TAP grant to get those additional funds for construction. And lastly, the South Sewer Project, which we talked about extensively at the last meeting. We have a $250,000 city contribution that is budgeted. Again, we transferred that 2 fiscal years ago. So all of those funds are just sitting and waiting to be used in the capital projects fund. Other than the additional for the TAP grant, it's not affecting the current budget, but those projects are ongoing. You'll see many vehicles listed here for our enterprise fleet management program. I believe it was late 2017. We entered that lease management program with them. And so we haven't quite gotten to the end of our first leases yet, but as we come to the end of these leases, we sell the vehicles that are leased. We take the profit, we roll it into a new lease, which thereby rolls those payments. So as we come to the end of these first leases, we will see that financial benefit start to roll in. So I just wanted to explain that a little bit for our new council members who weren't here when we adopted this plan. The benefit really kicks in after your first leases expire. But with that said, we do have some city-owned vehicles that we are asking to be replaced through our fleet management program. You'll see all those listed below, 3 for building inspection, 28 for police, but I've put on there that 18 of those vehicles have been previously approved and ordered. They just haven't arrived yet. There's been some delays in vehicle manufacturing due to part shortages. So they're requesting 10 additional vehicles. And again, most of these vehicles will not arrive until at least January. It'll be halfway through the fiscal year before they arrive. Fire and code, 1 vehicle that was actually previously approved by council in the last budget amendment. 3 vehicles for fire, 4 for public works. And then dispatch, sanitation, and recycling is funded for those. So obviously those are not the cost of a full vehicle, that's the total of the estimated lease payments that we will make this fiscal year. This next slide, we kind of took all the rest of our capital expenses and put them into 3 columns. And so either funded with current revenues in fiscal year 2022, funded with the American Rescue Plan, or deferred to either a mid-year budget amendment or a later budget. The $49,000 in general government is for budgeting software that will make that process much easier and more efficient for all departments. The police equipment is $8,000 for an office expansion and $93,000 for MDTs and radios for all the new vehicles that are coming in. The fire department, it's $25,000 for a vehicle exhaust removal system. When they're working on the fire trucks, they hook those up to this vehicle exhaust removal system. Obviously, that's a safety issue to make sure our firefighters are safe when they're working on those vehicles. $5,000 for some improvements to the training center, $6,000 for breathing cylinders, and $10,000 for updated fitness equipment. We have deferred the $12,000 is the Station 4 needs assessment. When council is ready, when we're ready to move forward on that project, we will bring that back in. For Public Works, the $311,000 that's funded is a loader, a mower, and a leaf vac. And we have deferred a $55,000 chipper and a $350,000 street sweeper. The street sweeper is something that's used for stormwater activities, obviously keeping the leaves and everything out of our streets, out of our storm sewer. So we think that if we're deferring that to see if we're able to get a stormwater utility fee at any point, that is a purchase that would be eligible under that. So we're going to wait and see on that one. City engineer, $115,000 for the Water Street parking lot improvements. There's a few lots down there. It's also for the lot behind Misbehaving as well. And then we've deferred $120,000 for a connector road study until council is ready to pick that project up, and $540,000 for Oxford and Lexus Way. The reason those are deferred is when the council is ready to begin those projects, those are the type of projects that we would fund with bond issues due to their size typically. So we're deferring those costs until we're ready to start those projects, and then we can always adopt a resolution to reimburse ourselves from a bond issue if we choose to finance them that way. But Eddie had put just a little bit in his budget to get those started. But we can add that back in a mid-year amendment once we're ready to do that. Let's see, for Parks and Recreation, their capital improvements we have put in to be funded with ARPA, EMS, the city half of a new ambulance and some cardiac units. We feel that will be able to be funded with ARPA. And for stormwater, the $400,000 is improvements for Bourbon Street. And the guidance that came out today did specify stormwater specifically. So we should be able to make those improvements to the pipes under Bourbon Street. That's kind of a #1 priority for our stormwater right now. And the deferred projects for stormwater are Bradshaw Dam and Pocahontas Trail for now. Dispatch, that's a disaster recovery system. For sanitation, we're deferring the purchase of 2 garbage trucks. We're still looking into some options with those. It's possible that we could finance those through our enterprise fleet management program. So we're still looking into those options. So we've deferred that for now until we're able to see how to proceed with that. And cemetery, those capital expenditures are 2 John Deere Gators and a rear discharge mower.
Stacy, just let me say to the Public Works Committee, we'll get a meeting scheduled pretty quickly where we can go over some of Robert's budget and what our thinking is on some of these things that are being deferred.
Thank you, Mayor.
Operating and maintenance expenditures, these are just some highlights of a few things. Our interlocal expenses increased by $661,369. Of course, that is the county funded interlocals. That's our half. And as mentioned on the previous slide, we want to fund part of those EMS capital expenditures from ARPA. Community service nonprofit organizations, we had new or additional request of $35,500. We're actually recommending that we fund our contributions to all of our charitable or nonprofit organizations from ARPA based upon those guidelines. Parks and Recreation still has some significant revenue shortfalls occurring. They're back open and operating, but not to full capacity. They requested an additional $44,914 for operating. Tourism is one of the things that's mentioned, economic recovery with ARPA, lost revenue replacement. So we do feel like the Parks and Rec is a legitimate expense for those. The Ed Davis Center is funded solely by the city. They had a small increase requested. However, we do feel like Ed Davis as a community service center can be funded with ARPA for this year. Planning and zoning also has had revenue shortfalls. They requested an additional $22,189, which we're proposing to be funded with ARPA due to their revenue shortfalls. And I know that number looks large for line item increases, but I've got the detail of that. A lot of that is CCTV for stormwater, some engineering projects, departmental request, and increased property and liability insurance. Again, we mentioned that we made a lot of cuts to line items in fiscal years 20 and 21. So this is getting a lot of our line items back up to where they were back in fiscal year 2019, actually. But all of our line item requests are funded out of current year revenue.
Stacy, can I ask a question?
Yes.
I know that a lot of the ARPA funding was supposed to be made public today. Did that happen? I noticed a lot of these are going to be funded through ARPA, and I know there's strings attached.
We'll talk about that more in a little bit because I definitely want to let Andrew chime in on that. I will say we did get more specific guidance today. But we did not get our final allocations today, but I'll let Andrew talk about that one a little bit more near the end. He's been doing a lot of research on that, and but we'll talk about it just a little bit more.
Great, thank you.
This chart just kind of gives us other funds, everything except the general fund. As you can see, the bulk of that is the grant fund. We have a lot of federal grants. We have budgeted about $2.4 million from ARPA through all the things you've seen added up as we've gone through the slides. We still have a CDBG grant for the Boston neighborhood. We have VOCA, the remaining balance of our CMAC and TAP grants for Cardinal Drive and West Main Street, as well as some smaller grants like our Victims Advocate, Kentucky Office of Homeland Security, Highway Safety, as well as an EPA 319 grant for the South Sewer. So that's a good thing. It's great that we're able to utilize a lot of federal grant funding to help with some of these special projects and services to our community. So that is the largest chunk of those. The next is, let's see, the 2.4 million, I believe, is the 911 dispatch fund. So we've talked about that a little bit. And then it's hard to see with these colors, but you can see what the others are there. As mentioned, the 911 fund actually has a budget surplus this year of $118,000. So again, the 911 service fee that we adopted is completely covering those expenses. The alcohol fund, that covers 25% of the city clerk's payroll expenses, and it covers 15% of our police officers or police department's expenses, as well as about $72,000 of specific alcohol program. Our drug fund, that's a carry forward fund. We're still carrying forward about $226,000. There's not a lot of new revenue coming into the drug fund right now, but years ago we received a lot of money from the feds for some drug seizures that we did. So we're still the police department uses that to buy some specialized equipment every now and then, but they're very careful and stretch those funds out as long as they can. And as mentioned before, our capital projects fund is the balance of our TAP, CMAC, and South Sewer project contributions. The Environmental Services Fund, we talk about this one a lot. Mainly, this is sanitation and recycling, and stormwater accounts are housed in this fund, but they're covered entirely by the general fund. So the fund balance at June 30, 2020 for our Environmental Services Fund was about $529,000. The current year budget is projecting a budget surplus of $113,000. This budget that we're proposing for next year projects a deficit of $78,950, which is mainly due to line item increases. And as we've mentioned before, our sanitation picks up the difference on recycling. Our recycling expenditures are split 50-50 with Scott County Fiscal Court. The recycling center itself operates at a deficit of about $268,000. So the city and the county jointly have to cover that $268,000. And our sanitation covers about $133,000 of our recycling center's expenditures. So when the Environmental Services Fund has a deficit of $78,950, it's really due to recycling. If it wasn't for recycling, our sanitation fund would break even or have a small surplus. As mentioned previously, we did defer the purchase of those garbage trucks until a later budget action. And as mentioned, our stormwater expenditures are mostly covered by the general fund. We're proposing $465,000 of stormwater expenditures this year, and the county is expected to contribute about $24,000 for our joint MS4 permit administration. I'm going to let Andrew, if you would like Andrew to speak a little bit to ARPA. We were hoping to have a little more information today. We got a little bit, but there's more forthcoming. Andrew?
Sure. We did learn today around 3 o'clock, nothing like last minute, what some of the uses of what all of the uses of the funds will be. We've known since the law was passed, the 4 general categories of things that we could spend this money on, but they were very broad, and we were promised detailed guidance on exactly what ARPA funds could be used for. And we got 150 pages of guidance delivered at 3 o'clock today. So needless to say, we've got a lot of reading to do. I've already sort of read through some of the summary provisions, but even those are 20 and 30 pages long. What we didn't get, unfortunately, we were told we would get, was our exact allocation. They gave the allocations to entitlement communities for places like Lexington and Louisville and Bowling Green. But non-entitlement communities like Georgetown didn't get an exact funding amount. However, we did get a new and confirmed total state allocation amount for all non-entitlement cities. And the League of Cities has done a new calculation, and I did the same calculation using that new number. And it looks like if we're correct and DLG, the state entity that will hand out these grant funds, if they do it correct and we're correct, we should get just over $9 million in rescue plan funds. And we'll get half of that in 1 month from today, and we'll get half of that a year from then. We are planning on digesting all of this information and trying to lay it out in a way that everyone can understand. It's possible that we're going to have to tweak, things based on what they said. I've already seen a few things that I didn't expect, things that are completely the opposite of what we saw under the CARES Act, and therefore we're expecting. But anybody who wants to know more about the ARPA funds and the amounts allocated to local governments and what they can be used for can go read either the full text or the fact sheet, or the even better, the frequently asked questions are the ones where folks like us ask, can we do this or can we do that? And I will send you all a link at the end of the meeting to where you can view that stuff. I think, long story short, we're going to be handed a significant sum of money over the next 2 years, but it is going to be a full-time job to figure out how to spend it, and then we will come back to you all. And I've had a number of council members ask, can we have the opportunity to weigh in on what we would like to do with those funds? And absolutely, the answer is yes. I think, assuming that $9 million is the number, we've put just a little bit over a quarter of that into 1 year's budget, which leaves, 3/4 left for the next 2 years, because all we would have is 2 more years to spend that money. I'll take any questions if you all have it. But that's the extent of essentially what I know today.
Andrew, I've asked you before, I'll ask you again. Would something like City Hall renovation be appropriate?
I don't believe so. One of the questions asked was, can we use it for general infrastructure projects? And the answer given was only if the need for that general infrastructure project was necessitated by COVID or an economic downturn as a result of COVID. Whereas infrastructure such as water, sewer, and broadband is allowed regardless.
Andrew, I think you've mentioned this to the council, but we've got pretty specific plans. As soon as you have time to digest this, we intend to do a presentation to the council focused only on the American Rescue Plan.
Right.
And when we know the dollar amount and when we can give the council as solid a guidance as we can, we're going to understand it together, and then ask the council to be involved in the process of determining how we spend it.
Absolutely.
So more to come on that.
More to come.
And I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to repeat myself. I don't need it.
Well, I've only got one slide left, and it's just we typically end with a snapshot of our general fund balance, so you can see where we're at. Again, a 10-year look on that. You see, in 2018, we were up to about 21.3 million, and what appears to be a very significant drop to 2019 of 12.3 million. And yes, it was a significant drop. However, we funded 2 very large capital projects from fund balance, being the new radio system for Georgetown, Scott County, and the Lanes Run Business Park Phase 2 expansion. So I know council was proud of being able to do that out of fund balance. And after fiscal year 19, fiscal year 2020, we have, this is not the final audited number, but pretty close projection of 16.7 million that we ended fiscal year 2020. A lot of that had to do with our CARES Act funding. As mentioned previously, we were able to use about 2.4 million of CARES Act dollars to pay for fire and police expenses. So that greatly helped our 2020 budget. And then 2021, we're projecting about 16 million. The 2021 amended budget uses a little over 600,000 of prior year reserves. But if our revenues end higher than anticipated, which I think they will, there's a very good chance that our 2021 actual numbers will break even or possibly even a small surplus. And then for 2022 projected, again, we're showing that our budget has a $5,578 surplus. So that increases that projected fund balance a tiny bit. So that is all I have for this presentation. I'm going to stop my screen share. If anyone has any questions or needs me to pull up a specific slide again, I can do that.
So what you are going to receive, of course, is this monster document that really is our budget. What Stacy has shown you is an overview via PowerPoint. This is, she's explained to you mostly what's in here, but well, all of what's in here, I believe. You can find lots and lots of detail here. If you have any questions about some of the specifics that Stacy mentioned, both revenue and expenditures, they're here. Let's see, Stacy, it's the last few pages near the end. You'll find some tables with all the salaries. You'll have a separate sheet that shows you the justification that I promised we'd send you. So there's plenty. You've been given really a lot of information, and it's more than anyone can really absorb in one sitting. But you're going to have it all in front of you. We will gather again in 2 weeks when we would anticipate having first reading of the budget ordinance. Still no vote, but plenty of opportunity to talk about it. Then 2 weeks after that, we would have second meeting and or second reading and roll call vote. There's time in this schedule for a workshop if anybody feels the need for that. We want you all to have all the information, or feel as though you have all the information that you need to make the final decisions. But be glad to answer any questions that just jump to mind with your first look at it.
And I'll get all the documents out to everybody in the morning. And like the mayor said, you'll have 2 weeks before first reading to ask me all the questions you might have.
And just for anybody that may be new to this process, budgets are mayor's responsible for presenting a budget to the council. And I really like doing that in concert with the finance committee, but the budget is presented to the council as a whole. So council does not have line item veto authority. So you're being given a package. Be happy to answer any question about it. But eventually, when we finally get to the vote, council has an opportunity to vote the budget up or down. And if council decides to vote it down, then the council has the opportunity to rewrite it in any way they see fit. So that's just step by step the way that process will go. Dave and Connie, you think we've worn them out enough?
A lot of information, Mayor. I look forward to mulling through it even more.
Yeah. Well, and even as much as you all have seen it, there's still things for you to go through and for us to talk about. Stacy, anything else you'd like to add to this conversation?
No, I don't think so.
Great job. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mayor, that would be one thing I would like to say. Stacy and Andrew, I know you've had your team in place, Mayor, working on this. They definitely need to be committed. I know they put a lot of time, effort, and thought into this whole process. So thank you all.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And thank the committee as well. Let's see. It gets easier from here, I promise, for the rest of this meeting. Item 9, under the Police Department, we have a resolution approving application for the VOCA grant that Stacy mentioned earlier. This will let us make our second VOCA grant full-time. And if we are not successful, we've included it in the budget.
Motion, Mayor.
Thank you, Connie.
Second,
Second was where?
Tammy.
Oh, hi, Tammy. Thank you. Okay, if there are no questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Thank you. That carries. Item B is a resolution approving an application for bulletproof vest grant.
Mayor, I make a motion.
Thank you, Todd.
Second,
Second, Mayor.
I think Tammy barely edged you, Greg. If there are any questions, if there are no questions, all in favor say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? That carries. Well, congratulations. We're down to item 10 on the agenda for council comments. I think I'm going to start up in the upper left-hand corner, Mark, and that's you tonight.
Yes, sir. I enjoyed hearing the news and the mayor comments about City Hall opening up next Monday. That's it's been a long time. And furthermore, I can't wait to see everybody in 2 weeks in person. So that's all I got, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Willow?
Thank you, Mayor. I thought it was a really informative, important meeting. I want to thank the Finance Committee and the mayor and Stacy and Andrew and everybody involved in this. I look forward to studying it further. And I want to thank the fire department for giving me a really great tour last week of all of their facilities and all of their dreams and visions. I even got to see some of the hazmat recruits in operation and realize in a more intimate way just how much they do day in and day out to bring good fire service to our community. So thank you to Chief Colson and others for that. I've had lots of constituent contacts over the past couple of weeks, many of them dealing with the wastewater presentation that we had 2 weeks ago. And a lot of things have been flying on the social media that has kind of taken crazy proportions. And I'm thankful that we're able to say that this is a 12 to 15 month. That was just the beginning of an analysis. It had nothing final, and it had no funding that was actually proposed. And I'm also interested to see that the ARPA funds may be able to be used to offset some of those concerns and some of that funding, unless I'm reading that the wrong way, Mayor.
No, I think there's a lot of flexibility there, Willow. What we have to draw from the guidance, from the ARPA fund guidance, and help ourselves and the council get comfortable with is we all know that it's financially poor judgment to spend one-time money on recurring expenses.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a quick way to get yourself into trouble. So our default, that's not wise to do. I think these ARPA funds, the guidance is going to show us that in this particular transition period, these are actually recommended uses. So I think our challenge is to make sure we understand the tool and feel as though we're using it responsibly, because some of it would not be typical financial guidance.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, ma'am. Connie?
Mayor, I just want to say thank you to you and Andrew and Stacy for all the hard work that you all put into this presentation. It was really good, and I appreciate it. And I also want to say I can't wait to see everybody in person too. it'll be nice to be back to almost normal again. So thank you.
It will. And I need to make sure I was clear. We are going to open City Hall on Monday, but I meant to say we're awaiting further guidance before we actually decide to have live council meetings again. I did intend to say we're opening City Hall. The doors will be open and we'll be doing business. We've been there, but we'll be doing business in a more conventional way. I'm sorry, Mark, I meant to imply that guidance is changing, and I think that soon we will see those things being eased, but I'm not sure we're going to see each other in 2 weeks. If we can, we will.
Okay, that's fine.
All right. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that I hadn't misled you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Todd?
Thank you, sir. Thanks for Stacy and your team for putting together a great presentation. There's a whole lot of information to go muddling through, so I look forward to getting that and getting down and then meeting with you and Greg as part of the Senate Public Works Committee. So look forward to that. So thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. And I think the three of us have some pretty big stuff that it's time we talked about. So I'm looking forward to that meeting.
Absolutely.
Okay. Greg?
Thank you, Mayor. Just to echo everyone's sentiment so far, thanks to the Finance Committee and Stacy and Andrew for putting together a budget. Personally, I know how difficult that can be and how arduous and time consuming that is. So I do thank you for your efforts there. Glad to hear that City Hall is opening back up next week, and just hope that we can start meeting in person really, really soon. It'd be nice to meet to see everybody's faces. I know most of you personally, but I like to see your face. So thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Tammy?
Yes, I just wanted to say thank you to you all for working on this budget and making it so easy for us to understand. It's a lot to look at, and you've done a terrific job. It also, the compromise that was put in place, it makes me proud to know that as a council that we always work together as a team. And I like to see that. Inevitably, things are going to come up that we don't all agree on, and everybody has a voice, and that was in play, and I appreciate that. One other thing, this is small potatoes, but Devin and Eddie Hightower and I met this past week with Patty Strimender of Bluegrass Source, and we were beginning talking about a project for rain barrels, a community project. And so we're going to look at some different things, and we'll bring that forward in the next couple of weeks. But it's a small thing to help deal with the stormwater issue, but it might be something fun that we can do with the community. So just wanted to let y'all know about that. That's all I have today. Thanks.
Thank you, Tammy. David?
Thank you, Mayor. When I said your team, I didn't mean to not include you. You were certainly extremely involved, and I know you took this very seriously, and you had a huge involvement in it. So thank you for everything you did. Thank you for reaching out to Connie and I, and thanks for working through some of the little bumps in the road. But all in all, I think it's gone well. I also want to thank, which I didn't do at the last meeting, I should have. I want to thank the fire department. I want to thank EMS. They gave me a ride to the hospital a few weeks ago, and fortunately things are going okay, but I really do appreciate having the quality of service that we have. And that's one of the reasons I support our emergency services like I do. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, David. I'm glad they gave you a good ride.
They did.
Let's not do that anymore. We have to.
I agree.
Okay, thank you. Karen?
Just a couple of things. Ditto is what everybody else on the council has said. Putting a budget together is like putting a puzzle together, and you always have missing pieces that you can't finish it out correctly. So it's not an easy task. So there's a lot of hours and a lot of work to that. So good job on that, getting it presented and getting it to us. And now we get to delve into it and take a look at it. But it sounds like the numbers are pretty good this year. Just some cautions to what I'm seeing from my perspective of things is I'm seeing that people are just now starting to feel the crunch a little bit, and that's just from my operations of interacting with people in the retail world, and something that may for the future that may be a problem is this shortage of everything may affect being able to for businesses to make the money that they need to make the money because they can't get the product to sell the product. So those are some things, just giving you some feedback for the horizon of what the council might have to consider down the road. But for overall, the budget looks like it's going to be a good budget and one that can be managed for the coming year. And so I really want us to get back together as a unit. I think we're about the last group in town that's board, commission, council that's not meeting collectively. So if we can do that, although I have to say for my circumstances, since I had that ride to the hospital as well, it was nice when I was sick being able to be on Zoom, but I'm kind of getting tired of it. I want to see you all too. So hopefully we can get that worked out in a couple of weeks so we can all get back together again. So that's it. Until then, goodbye to everybody.
Great. Thank you, Karen. If there's nothing else to come before the council, really good meeting tonight, and we're going to send you a lot of stuff to take a look at. This meeting, why don't we stand adjourned? Thank you.